There is a material sitting in your garage right now that kills 99% of bacteria on contact. No chemicals, no filters, and no electricity required. Ancient civilizations on 5 different continents discovered it independently over thousands of years. But if you try to install it on your private well, most state codes have no pathway to approve it. That is not an accident, and this video will show you why. Scientists call it the oligodynamic effect, the ability of heavy metals like copper and silver to destroy bacteria, viruses, and fungi on contact. When water meets copper, the metal releases ions that puncture bacterial cell walls, attack DNA directly, and prevent reproduction. The organism cannot repair itself, it cannot reproduce, it dies. Researchers confirm copper surfaces eliminate over 99% of dangerous microorganisms within hours, and some studies show the killing begins in as little as 15 minutes. The World Health Organization sets the safety limit for copper in drinking water at 2 milligrams per liter, and water stored overnight in copper vessels measures below 0.2 parts per million, 10 times within the safety ceiling. The physics works, and it works within a margin so wide that ancient civilizations relied on it for millennia without any understanding of microbiology at all. This knowledge isn't new, we inherited it. Archaeological research confirms that copper has been used to store and treat water for more than 4,000 years. Ancient India, Greece, Rome, and historical cultures across Europe and Asia all arrived at the same answer. They didn't understand microbiology. They simply observed that copper worked. Modern science has only confirmed what they already knew. Then in 1852, a French physician accidentally proved what all of them already knew. His name was Victor Bierck. In 1852, he walked into a copper smelting facility in the 3rd arrondissement of Paris. Cholera was tearing through the city. The conditions inside that smelter were terrible: poor ventilation, crowded housing nearby, minimal sanitation. By every measure, those 200 copper workers should have been dying at rates equal to or worse than the general population, but not a single one had contracted cholera. Not in the 1832 outbreak, not in 1849, not in 1852. 3 epidemics and 0 cases among workers handling copper every single day. Bierck expanded his investigation across Paris and then across Europe. He studied jewelers and goldsmiths and boilermakers. Every profession involving daily contact with copper showed the same mysterious protection. The numbers from the 1865 Paris epidemic tell the story with devastating clarity. Out of a population of 1,677,000 residents, 6,176 died. That is 3.7 deaths per thousand. But among the roughly 10,000 Parisians working in copper industries, only 16 died. That is about 1.6 deaths per thousand, roughly less than half the rate of the general population. In 1867, Bierck presented his findings to the French Academies of Science and Medicine. Modern researchers have since validated his observations and confirmed the precise biochemical mechanisms behind copper's antibacterial action. A doctor proved this over 170 years ago. His research was published. His numbers were verified. His discovery should have changed water treatment forever. Instead, it was buried under a chemical that arrived 50 years later. In 1908, a physician named John Lang Leal stood at the water treatment facility in Jersey City, New Jersey, and made a decision that would reshape the modern world. He ordered chlorine injected into the municipal water supply. It was the first large-scale chlorination of drinking water in the United States. Waterborne disease rates collapsed overnight. Typhoid cases plummeted. The public health impact was enormous and undeniable. Chlorine saved millions of lives. That is a fact, and this video will not pretend otherwise. But what happened next was not about public health, it was about economics. The cost of chlorine treatment at Jersey City came to 14 cents per million gallons. For the entire city supply of 40 million gallons per day, the total ran $5.60. Nothing could compete at that price point. By 1914, over 21 million Americans drank chlorinated water. By 1918, more than 1,000 North American cities had adopted chlorine systems. By 1941, 85% of American cities used it. Today, 98% of water treatment systems in the United States rely on chlorine. Copper-based disinfection did not fail, it was outspent. The industry that grew around chlorine had no interest in alternatives, and the science kept revealing problems that chlorine's champions preferred to ignore. When chlorine reacts with organic matter in water, it creates compounds called trihalomethanes. Epidemiological studies have linked trihalomethane exposure to a 33% increased risk of bladder cancer. Those risks were documented at exposure levels below the regulatory limits set by both the United States and European Union. Copper and silver ionization produces zero carcinogenic byproducts, zero. But by the time anyone measured the cancer risk, chlorine had already captured the entire market. So copper was forgotten for municipal water. But in 1967, at a NASA laboratory in Houston, a team of engineers rediscovered it because in space, chlorine was simply not an option. Engineers at NASA's Manned Space Center partnered with the Garrett Corporation to build a water purifier for the Apollo spacecraft. The requirements were extreme: small, lightweight, no constant monitoring by astronauts in orbit, and absolutely no chlorine, because chlorine gas inside a sealed spacecraft would be catastrophic. The solution weighed 9 ounces. It was slightly larger than a cigarette pack. It dispensed silver ions into the spacecraft water supply and successfully killed bacteria without a single chemical additive. Completely chlorine-free. The system passed a low-voltage electrical current through copper and silver electrodes. Copper ions destroyed algae. Silver ions destroyed bacteria. It worked in zero gravity, hurtling through the vacuum of space on the way to the moon. After Apollo, the technology came home. It found its way into hospitals fighting a deadly waterborne enemy called Legionella. This bacteria thrives in building plumbing systems and causes Legionnaire's disease, which kills immunocompromised patients. The first 16 hospitals to install copper-silver ionization had all experienced cases of hospital-acquired Legionnaire's disease. 75% had already tried everything else: superheat and flush, ultraviolet light, hyperchlorination. Nothing worked well enough. After installation, the results were remarkable. By 1995, half of those surveyed hospitals reported zero Legionella in their test samples, and subsequent multi-year studies showed up to 80% of sites sustained successful control. Across all 16 hospitals, not a single case of hospital-acquired Legionnaire's disease occurred after the systems went live. Not one case in over a decade of continuous operation. Researchers documented more than 99.99% reduction of biofilm-associated bacteria within 24 hours. Peer-reviewed studies confirmed ionization outperformed thermal eradication methods. By 2003, over 100 hospitals had adopted the technology. NASA validated it for astronauts. Hospitals trusted it to protect their most vulnerable patients. 3 decades of peer-reviewed research confirmed it works. So why can you not install one on your well? Approximately 43 million Americans get their drinking water from private wells. The Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, does not regulate private wells. Homeowners are entirely responsible for their own water quality. A 2006 survey of 450 private wells found coliform bacteria in roughly 35% and E. coli in about 15%. 1 in 7 private wells in this country contains bacteria that can make you seriously ill. Most of those homeowners have no idea. Copper-silver ionization is recognized by both the World Health Organization and the EPA as an effective method for controlling waterborne pathogens. It has been validated in space. It has been validated in hospitals. It has passed every scientific evaluation put in front of it. But when a homeowner tries to install one on a residential well, most state plumbing codes offer no compliance pathway. The technology does not fit the template. Building codes were written around chlorination as the default assumption for water disinfection. If the code template assumes chemical treatment, then a system using metal ions has no place in the regulatory framework. Inspectors cannot approve what their training never covered. Contractors cannot recommend what their licensing exams never mentioned. The same pattern that erased earth tube cooling from HVAC codes erased copper ionization from plumbing codes. The technology did not fail any test. It was never given a seat at the table, and the economics reinforced the silence. Municipal water treatment generates billions in recurring chemical revenue every year. Every ionization unit installed is a chlorine contract that never gets signed, a chemical delivery that never gets scheduled, a testing fee that never gets billed. The technology inspired by NASA's early space design sits in a regulatory gray area for residential private well owners. Not because the science failed. The science has been settled for decades, because the codes were never written to include it. Now, before anyone drives to the hardware store, let me be completely honest about what this technology can and cannot do, because videos like this one fill up with comments pointing out the catches, so let me point them out first. A basic copper and silver ionization system works by passing low-voltage direct current through copper and silver electrodes mounted inline on your well pressure line. Industry guidelines recommend a copper concentration between 0.2 to 0.8 parts per million and silver between 10 and 80 parts per billion. Both sit within EPA safety standards. Material costs for a basic setup are genuinely low, but the system is not instant. It takes 30 to 45 days for copper and silver ions to fully penetrate an established biofilm inside your pipes. You will not see results overnight. Water chemistry matters enormously. One hospital in Ohio installed a copper-silver ionization system and found it ineffective despite adequate ion concentrations. The problem was pH. Their water tested between 8.5 and 9.0. At that alkalinity, the ions lose their killing power. If your well water runs above 8.5 on the pH scale, this system will underperform significantly. Test your water first. Hard water causes electrode scaling that reduces ion output over time. You need to clean flow cells periodically. If your well casing is cracked or your wellhead seal is compromised, fix the structural problem first. Copper ions cannot overcome a well that is actively pulling contamination from the surface. And if you are in South Florida, where the water table sits at 6 feet, or coastal Louisiana, where the geology fights you on every front, this may not be your best option. One medical note: a rare genetic condition called Wilson's disease prevents certain individuals from metabolizing copper properly. Know your household health before you install anything. But for the millions of homeowners across the rest of the country, with properly constructed wells and water pH below 8.5, the science is not ambiguous. This works. It has worked for 5,000 years. Copper is older than civilization itself. It was the first metal humans learned to shape. Before iron, before steel, before concrete or rebar or any material we associate with modern construction. The Persians used it to keep water safe in desert cities that outlasted every empire since. A French doctor named Victor Burke proved its power walking through cholera wards where copper workers never fell ill. NASA engineers built it into a 9-ounce device that flew to the moon. Hospital researchers documented 3 decades of continuous protection for patients whose immune systems could not protect themselves. The mechanism does not require a chemical plant. It does not produce carcinogenic byproducts. It does not need a monthly delivery truck or a municipal utility connection. Copper does not care about building codes or lobbying budgets or regulatory frameworks written around the assumption that chemicals are the only answer. It simply works. It worked for nomads dropping coins into leather water bags on the steppes of Central Asia. It works in intensive care units right now as you listen to this. And if you build it correctly within the conditions where the physics holds, it will work for you, quietly, cheaply, for decades, while the chemical disinfection industry pretends it does not exist. And don't forget, if you want to take your off-grid electrical game to the next level, my buddy Oliver over at Off Grid Ohms has got you covered. Go show him some love.